Good morning, we are live.
We did not receive a bid from Taylor. They asked to do a set of plans, but they didn't return it.
What was the bridge number?
376. It's on 360th Street, northeast of Highlandville. It's at High Trust.
Oh,
It's
okay.
been closed for
Never looked
quite a
at,
while.
that's when we looked at railroad cars at for a
Yeah,
while.
and the rail cars weren't gonna work.
You want to award the bid then?
Yeah, if you guys are wanting to, you can go ahead and award it and we'll get the contract set out and
Lee, what's the total on the low bid?
585,155.25.
I would move that we accept the low bid from K Construction.
Second by John,
Second.
second by Vic. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Well, I know those folks up there, it's in my territory, they've been waiting patiently, so it'd be nice.
What are we looking at on a completion date?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Wait, what are we looking at on completion date on?
That's the one where we gave them a lot of latitude on it.
Yeah,
It's closed, they can start it this fall if they wish, if not, they have to get after it right away in the spring. It's supposed to be completed by July 1 of next year. But the way construction costs were going, we thought we'd give them as much room as we could, and I'm not gonna say that made a huge difference, but I think it did make some difference,
couldn't hurt.
you know. So. I have the agreement from, from DOT. This is for Bridge 65 on the Full Line Road. When we first started that project, we had a federal aid agreement. Since then, the swap bill went through. And, since nothing has happened with this structure to federalize it, we were able to switch it over into the swap. So it kept the federal funds out of it, and, the swap dollars are gonna, be used. We still have to get it's got DOT's county bridge fund money, and then our swap bridge dollars on it. So.
You maybe want to explain what the swap is, so they know what's going on.
Yeah, the swap, we used to have federal aid bridge funds, the way the current federal bill, reads. This goes all the way back into the early 90s, we get these federal bills and there's always federal bridge dollars in there. And the last bill we had did not specifically state in there that X amount or a certain percentage or whatever has to go to the local agencies. They kind of left it open. So that allowed us to work with the state, and the state is keeping all of the federal funds. And because when they do any project, they don't care what funding source they use. All the hoops that go through and design requirements they use are all the same. So for us to not have to follow the federal guidelines, we can relax some of our design requirements. It gives us a lot more latitude on what we want to do. And so we worked with the state. They had to pass legislation to allow primary fund dollars to be spent on the secondary system. That didn't used to be a legal action. They corrected that now, so they keep all the federal dollars, and then they match them dollar for dollar, which a lot of states don't do. And we get that, they call it swap, because we swapped them their primary funds for the federal funds. So that's where the whole swap thing came about. There is a chance that, you know, when they write the next federal bill, that they put language in there that says X amount of this money has to be spent on the local systems. Then we have to undo this swap thing, because the law says we have to use those federal funds and there's no way around it. So, we're hoping it'll stay the way it is, and makes it a lot easier, and our money goes a little bit further because we don't have to bill to the Fed requirements, but.
Is that first one on the pole line?
Yep, it's the first bridge across on the Full Line Road, and you're going towards Cresco. And we're giving Isaac a hard time this week because we've gone through the file and found that he found a correspondence that we were doing in 2011, because I was still in high school. We've been working on that one for a while.
When will that one be coming, or what?
My goal is to let that December of this year. We kind of sat on it for a little bit because the Bluffton Road was
Gotta get that
what
done.
had to go. And the bridge isn't posted. I mean, it's narrow, it's getting close. The beams, if you go on the west end of the bridge and climb underneath and look at the beams, they're starting to get pretty tough. But it hasn't caused it to get rated anyway. It's just narrow. So we just kind of let this go until we get, well, the Hutchinson Bridge in, because with that out, the detours around become rather cumbersome. And then the Bluffton Road was going, and I'm
Yeah.
sure material's gonna go across that bridge, so we kicked it down the road a little bit just to get those other projects out in front of it, even though we've been working on this thing forever. And it's somewhat ironic that we got swap funds on it because there's a NRCS EWP easement that comes right up to our existing right of way. Well, we can't make the bridge fit in the existing right of way. We had to expand it. And to get through the work to get that EWP easement released so we can get the right of way, we had to go through all of the federal hoops anyway. So, and that's been, NRCS took care of it. They did all the legwork on it, but
That's what took so long.
it's been a very long drawn out structure.
We should have a motion on that agreement.
I'd make that motion.
Motion by John,
Second.
second by Vic. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Got that. I brought up Isaac. He found out this last week that he passed his, PE exam. He's already made application to, the state of Iowa to get his PE license. He says, the only thing he complained about, he says, boy, they sure do want a lot of money for that.
Yeah.
Yep, they do. We're used to it. They're gonna ask you for it every 2 years, so.
That's a big deal, the PE. Tell them congratulations.
Yeah, it is. I mean, now that he has a PE, and this puts us in a little more of a precarious position, is, now he can go out and find jobs. And I know there's a few out there. I don't believe he's going to leave, but
A lot of
there's
jobs
some
going.
counties that they're struggling to get engineers.
That's a thing, you know, just talking to other people in county government, boy, if they're missing a key player, you better guard your good employees.
Yeah, it-
Go
Well, I'm
after
looking
it.
for an assessor too or something. That's another one.
yeah, there's, I mean,
Yeah,
Oh,
they look-
assessors are.
it's just,
Real hard to find.
they're not there, and we,
Yeah.
part of it is, I mean, the private sector, I mean, you're paid, there's just no question about it, you're paid more in the private sector, but you have a lot more, I don't wanna call it security, because the private sector, you do a design and you walk away from it. Here, we design it, build it, and then we watch it deteriorate, and we have to try to keep it going.
Yeah,
It's the best it's ever gonna look is the day you built it, you know?
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but, yeah, he's pretty excited and, we can have some more discussion of it, I think. That American Rescue Plan. I know, Fayette County has already met with Paul Berland to go over some of that. And I had a conversation this last week with, Matt, Cron over at NRCS because of, the HUD program that came through, we're doing these drawdown structures. And there's some of them that they're not sure if the money's gonna be enough, you know, we identified all these sites. He's not sure if there's enough money in the HUD program to cover them all. Well, this American Rescue Plan, this is a qualifying item. So he's gonna go back through what they have. They've let 2 of them, I believe, one of them starting this week, Tuesday, on 180th Street, just off the Middle Kelmer Road. Then there's another one a half a mile from it, and I moved from one to the other. And, then there's one up on Fox Hollow, and the other one was on 190th Street, I think. And so they've got those 4 ready to go, but there's others that we can do. And, I visited with Ben, and, you know, we kind of have an idea of what our timeline is, but, I would strongly recommend bringing Paul in.
He's here at 1 o'clock on
You
Wednesday.
guys are Johnny on the spot. And,
So if you wanna come back and.
yeah, I will, and visit with him on that, because, I've read some of what's in the plan, and it's cumbersome. But if we can get someone to manage this, and all we have to worry about is where we're gonna put it within and build. I think this would be a great thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
You can't, my opinion, we can't build enough of these drawdown structures to.
yeah.
Saves a lot of,
Oh, they're
Oh.
wonderful on our, just everything. Everybody's better off with them.
There's so many places they just fit right in. They,
Yeah.
you know, the two purposes of the road system and then
saving.
blowing the
dirt.
runoff off the land. It just,
Saving
why
dirt.
not use that same real estate to do two things?
And the hardest part is getting the landowner, because they're the one, that immediate landowner that has that ponding.
Yeah.
And, so they're somewhat limited on what that land can be used, because you're not gonna be able to plant corn or beans or something like that, to ground it out.
So if he had land on both sides of the roads, he's gonna go for it for
Okay.
sure, then he got all that water coming down the bottom.
Yeah, it's something I think that would be wonderful, and, along with that, and like I said, I visited with Ben a little bit about this. And, there's that issue of, any money that our revenues dropped because of the impact of what COVID did. And, Ben has to figure out what that number is. And, if that does apply to secondary road, we do run into a little bit of a problem that, regardless of what that number is, we're not gonna see that money for years out. So our maximum transfer at that point is still that maximum transfer. So if we can show, yes, we can put this money into roads to make up the shortfalls from the prior year or two or whatever it is, we can't just transfer it in there. So you're gonna have to come up with a different way to do that. It may not be a big amount of money, or, and Ben has to figure that out. But
Yeah, and I'm working with Paul on how we're supposed to figure that.
yeah, how that is figured, and, you have your infrastructure fund, and, so that's some place that you can put it where it's not gonna hurt that transfer. Because, we just have to watch that. We sold the truck, and we really found out how much that can be a real pain when we sold the truck 8, 9 years ago to conservation, and they wrote us perfect. And because that is another county entity, they can't just buy something off us. It comes across as a transfer, and we went over the maximum, the value of that truck, and got ourselves a little slap on the wrist that you can't do that. So that's why we have to kind of watch that. But, the nice thing about that is that does not limit where you can spend that money. You can spend it on anything. If you wanted to,
That's the
Put in
tax,
addition.
the loss of revenue.
lots of revenue, you spend it on anything secondary road could be spent on. If you spend it directly out of that, this rescue plan, it does limit where that can go. The other thing, and I've talked with Isaac about this, because we've got a few pipe we've been playing around with that we have ideas of what we want to do, but it's not really working out the way we would like it to. Is to where we have kind of a high fill, I'm gonna call it a poor man's drawdown, where, you have a 60-inch pipe, but you got a high fill. If we can just go in and drop that down to a poor fill, we're not really building a true drawdown. We're restricting the pipe a little bit and slowing some of that water but we're not gonna create the ponding issue that we would if we built a true drawdown, because we're not designing to a low Q like that. We're just gonna shrink that pipe just a hair, back it up for a little bit, and then,
The idea of that being then that since you're restricting the flow of the water, now it becomes eligible for
it would be
Rescue-
eligible,
the
because
rescue plan.
we are doing that, and, we have a few pipe that, and there's not many of these that we could do it with, because,
You don't wanna hold the water back so
Yeah,
much.
we
that
can't
it's
be
gonna go
ponding like that.
Over the road or something.
Yeah.
and we
Well,
can't
it'll take away
overtop.
some of the integrity of the road too, doesn't it? It's gonna hold back too much.
If you hold it for a long period of time, I mean, you have a seepage line going through that roadbed. It's there. If it's dry, you don't have a seepage line. But if you hold it too long, that works through it, and then if you do your soil analysis, it's called a slip plane. And it's just a kind of a curved shaped plane that if the soil types are right, and the water level's right, and the surcharge is right, it'll slide. And you don't want that. I had not seen that happen on any of our roads. Our biggest problem is if it overtops, is then it just digs it back up and takes it out. You do have a little bit of a piping issue, where the water.
Why is that when it comes out that it goes, how that, I just don't.
Typically-
I've seen that.
when it drops, it's, like when you look at the bottom side of a dam, it's always concrete, and they have like those big concrete blocks that
wall.
sit there. Then all that's done is you want to spin that water and dissipate that energy, because when it falls, gravity gives it energy. And so you're trying to dissipate that. When it falls out of the pipe, gravity gives it that energy, and it's going everywhere trying to dissipate it. Well, typically going away from the pipe, we anticipate that, you put riprap in or waterways or something to help, control what the water damage is gonna be. But going backwards under the road, it's just fill. And so it finds it and it gets underneath it and it starts going.
Yeah, you always see the backside of the culvert.
Yep,
It's way in the front side.
it's
Just
just,
weird.
can't, we could bet them on big rocks, but they don't bed well when you do that. It's just the nature of how, the energy.
Well, I think that's a good thing to look into, Lee, is to just, do your homework and see where you could do that type
Well,
of.
I mean, I'm all about spending money if they wanna give it to us.
Yeah.
We will never have enough money to fix all
I mean,
our
those-
problems.
How many of those culverts do you think you have?
Oh, I mean, I think we could probably find maybe a dozen of them that, it's just, everything's gotta be kind of right. If it's the farmer's best cornfield, yep, we're not gonna be able to do that one. If it's, if the road is darn near even with the top of the pipe, that's not gonna work either. We gotta have a good fill where we know we can back it up a little bit and not have a major impact on anything around it.
Yeah,
It's gonna narrow down our spots and honestly, I'd really like to build true drawdown better than doing this. I mean, it works, but I'd really rather build the true drawdowns and have a much bigger impact to that runoff.
but still, if you could do your homework, and you guys are good at it, find places where we just add to our
Yeah.
capacity to store water.
Yeah, it's, the one that I kind of thought of is, you go up the Locust Road, north of the shop, where, North Bear Road comes in. The road used to take two hard curves up there and we kind of straightened it out. And we have those big sections of, right away, they're left, they weren't big enough that if you take property from a landowner for road right of way and you try to leave them a little sliver that's of absolutely no value or use to them, you have to take that because they can't do anything with it. So why make them pay taxes on this little thing that they have no use for? So we get these chunks of right of way here and there that just don't work out for anybody else. And there's one, it's the southern one, it's south of North Bear and Locust. And, there's a field driveway and it's actually the old road bed. And there's a pipe in there and the pipe's too small. If you stand at the pipe and look upstream, here's a 10 by 10 box, and then you got this pipe. We could build that driveway up a little bit. We have a lot of room in there to store water, and I gotta talk to Corey about that. He doesn't have that. I see somebody mowed it. The other one is in Prairie. That's the one Farm Bureau helped us with. There's the signs up there. If you,
It's on the north.
it's on the northeast corner. This is the southeast corner of the intersection. And that's just one of those ones I thought, God, we put a smaller pipe in there, build that driveway up a little bit for that landowner, because he still has to get into that field. And then we can store a little bit of water in it. We have to run the hydraulics on it too, I'm not sure, but that's the one that popped into my head when I started thinking about it. So,
Yeah.
but that's some of what we had, or one of the spots I kind of had going. We did get an email this morning from River City about having a pre-con next week. We haven't set the date yet for it. But we'd like to get that going for Bluffton and find out what their true timetable is. And I was gonna talk to, not still here, Brendan. They were, middle of June, they thought they might be getting here to start the Hutchinson. We haven't heard from them yet. I was gonna ask him while I was here, but he got out of here before I could say anything. On W14, between Spillville and Ridgeway, Conover comes in from the east, and then W14 goes east-west, and then you continue west off of W14, it's 210th Street. And that intersection, W14 turns and goes north, and then that intersection has that Y to it, where there's two legs in that. I hate those things. There's more stop signs, it's people shooting because they have to look back at such a goofy angle. We took one out up on the Bluffton Road where you go to St. Bridget's Church.
Yeah.
The bridge crew's up there or over there now, and they're pulling those two together, and now that's gonna meet it as a T. So when you come in a T, you can see both directions. And,
That should help.
I've seen so many people shoot those because they're looking back, trying to figure out if somebody's coming, and, you just don't want that situation. So
I'm assuming that sometime in the past, it was the road was more of a.
well, W14 used to come over and then make a harder turn.
Yeah, and so instead of.
They made a better curve out of it, and we have this big chunk of right away that just sits there.
Triangle
It's like
there,
left two
and-
fingers in it.
And the old road bed are the two that are probably still there.
Yeah.
So it takes work to put it together, and some time in the past, they just left it.
We've done a couple of these over the years. There's probably 30 of them out there that we could do. That I just thinking going in my head on a map where we could do these. We don't do them very often, but we had to redo a pipe in there. We're gonna do it and fix this up, so. I know I got a call from, I bought another one up by Cardinal Marsh where, the road comes up from the south and it tees into, I think it's Madison. And if you wanna go left, you go straight. If you wanna go right, there's a finger that goes off to the right, and only one of them has a stop sign. So we gotta get that fixed. But I'd like to clean that one up. That one's got some sight distance issues to it that it's not gonna be as easy, but nonetheless, just seems like it can come as. Talked about the HUD project, that's gonna replace Bridge 227, a box culvert is going in its place, much better structure. The German church vacation that Jerry Thompson went in and talked to you guys about.
Yeah.
We just can't seem to get any of these that wanna go nicely, that's a mess. We can't find from when the property was actually taken for the roadway. The church is actually, it's all in right of way, except for the low block for the church, but the church has expanded outside of its lot into the right of way. And if you look at the lots in how the land sits now, that road came solely out of 140. It's not on the 40 line, it's to the west of the 40 line. So if we vacate, it doesn't go over to the other side, it stays to the side that it's on, but that guy has no land on that side of the road because the road cut it off. That's why the county has so much right of way there, and it's of no value to
So
it.
who does it go to?
We're trying to figure that out. Where is this gonna go?
Right.
And so we may change our idea on what we're doing with it, but it ended up just not being a very simple thing to get through, which, we're finding out with any of these vacations now we've been asked to do. They used to be pretty straightforward, now we're finding all the ugly ones, and it's probably because that's why they never did it.
Yeah,
Somebody else did it.
Exactly.
Just one question for you, Leah, did you get the batteries in the speed sensor?
I know they were delivered. That Friday that guy called, he said, I'm delivering them today. They are going out today. I don't know if Bubba's got them, got them in or not.
Check on that.
I know they were gonna be coming quickly.
I had a question on that Daily Bridge. I was up there for an hour Saturday morning.
How'd that go? It's a contentious position up there.
Yeah.
You just went to observe how it went with the canoers and stuff?
No, the guy called me and
Oh,
no, I didn't go to observe about the canoe thing, because there's no canoe, I mean, it ain't legal access there. for
We did
canoe.
not
I mean,
build
it's
any
nothing.
type of access.
It's really, any canoers trespassing.
Yeah.
Cause it is not and that property, they come up and mowed it, I don't know if he said Friday or Thursday, somebody come up and mowed it, that little patch there on the south side of the
Yeah.
village.
Okay, it is our right of way. I mean,
Is it your right away?
It is our right of way. If you look, the right of way stakes are there. We staked them.
Yep,
One, so if they wanted to put a fence and they know exactly where they can put it.
but he can fence where that stakes, there's 1, 2, and 3, one right off the corner of the bridge,
Yep.
he can put a fence through
Yeah,
there.
we put them right at the break point so he can see that next post, that's where my fence goes to. If he chooses to put them in. And we
But
did
if
put
they-
one in for,
If they stay in the right of way portion, they aren't trespassing.
that's right.
They can walk through there.
Anything to be the north of them stakes.
anything between the road and those stakes, they can walk on.
Walk on, yeah.
Yeah.
But them stakes run through, probably cut off half that property that they mowed. That's what, yeah.
Our guys mowed that?
That's what he said, but
Oh,
I
I have
don't
to
know
look
why,
into
I don't know why they'd have deadheaded, that's what he was all
Yeah,
kind of hot about
our
too.
guys shouldn't have mowed that.
Somebody mowed it and
I
they
mean,
probably,
I'm surprised our guys mowed into that right away. I mean, we're not really.
yeah, I don't know, that's what he said, he said the county come down mowed it, I don't know, but it was mowed.
You know, I mean, when, to give you guys some history on it. Yeah, I mean, and everybody knew that people were putting in and out of there. It was probably the busiest canoe landing we had in the county. And it has to do with float times. But, when we went to put the new bridge in, we talked to the landowners and said, do you guys want, we can build a parking area off, because the one landowner, well, both of them, they can't get through there with their farm
No.
equipment when everybody's putting in and out. They just, and it's ugly. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've
it
ever been.
is.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Nasty.
So we looked at it and said, we're willing to give them someplace to park these things and get out of your way. And neither landowner wanted anything to do with that. And, we ended up condemning for the one landowner because he just was not going to do
Yeah, he
anything.
wasn't gonna,
And so we built what we needed to get the bridge in, and that's it. And then the no parkings went up. I mean, they've been up before because people were parking right to the bridge and you couldn't get in and off the bridge, and it's been pretty quiet since we put those no parkings up, and,
or a tow zone on the
Yeah.
one side.
yeah, and that becomes a sheriff's.
Can I have you just hold for a minute? We got a public hearing
Oh,
at 10 o'clock.
And then actually, there's a 10:15 agenda time, so maybe
I can-
you're coming back for 11 thing, maybe you wanna come a little early and you can.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Get out of here.
Sorry about
No,
that.
that's all right.
No.
Thanks, Lee.
Okay, we have a public hearing, Krambeer zoning request. Tony? Oh, we gotta have,
I'll make a motion to open hearing.
the motion to give, second to Dan. Shirley?
Aye.
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 So vote aye also. Meeting is now open.
Jerry Krambeer wants to rezone a section property to AR, ag residential, to add another house on the property. 10 letters were sent to adjoining landowners on May 25th, 2 return recommending approval, 0 return recommending denial. Notice was published in the paper on May 27th, and the Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on this on May 11th and recommended 5-0 for approval.
6-0 or 5-0?
5-0.
Mr. Primary, have any statement you wish to make?
No, it isn't.
Okay.
Never been to one of these meetings, that is why I stopped by and see what's going on. Kind of interesting.
No, okay.
And you're Jerry?
Huh?
And you're Jerry?
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. What kind of driveways to that house? Not that it matters on this zoning group, but I'm just curious. I'm curious what kind of driveway you have going to the trailer site. I'm just curious.
Gravel.
Well,
That's closed.
close.
Close.
I need to. In the comments?
Uh,
You want to ask for comments or?
Was there any comments from the public? Anyone online wishing to comment? Not hearing any.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Vic,
Second.
second by Beard.
Aye.
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 I vote aye also.
The next action would be to hold the first reading.
Okay.
Want to do that?
Any motion?
I'd make the motion to hold the first reading.
Second.
Motion by Beard, second by Vic.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Ordinance amending the county zoning ordinance to change the zoning classification from A1 agricultural district to AR agricultural residential district for the hereon described property. Whereas a request for amendment to the rezoning ordinance of Winneshiek County was submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Said request having been acted upon by the Planning and Zoning Commission following a public hearing, and whereas the request for amendment to the rezoning ordinance pertains to the following described real estate. Lot 1 of 2 of 1 of 2 in the southwest border in section 9, township 98, north, range 7, west of the 5th BM, Winneshiek County, Iowa. Whereas the said zoning request requested that the property be rezoned from A1 agricultural district to AR agricultural residential district, and whereas a notice of time and place of public hearing of said request was published pursuant to law, and whereas a public hearing as required has been conducted by the Winneshiek County Board of Supervisors. Whereas the Winneshiek County Board of Supervisors has considered the Winneshiek County Comprehensive Plan in the review of the applicant's request and does find that the request is consistent with the policies and goals set out in the Winneshiek County Comprehensive Plan, and now therefore be resolved by the Winneshiek County Board of Supervisors. Don't know that one there. Number 1, the zoning classification as to the following described real estate. Lot 1 of 2 of 1 of 2, the southwest quarter in section 9 of township 98, north range 7 west of the 5th PM, Winneshiek County, Iowa, is hereby changed from A1 agricultural district to AR agricultural residential district. Number 2, that the zoning map of Winneshiek County, Iowa be modified to reflect the change. Repealer, all ordinance or parts of ordinance in conflict with this zoning ordinance or inconsistent with provisions of this ordinance are hereby repealed to the extent necessary to give the ordinance full force and effect. Severability clause. If any section, part, or provision of this ordinance should be adjudged invalid or unconstitutional, such adjudication shall not affect the validity of the ordinance as a whole, or any section, provision, or thereof not adjudged invalid or unconstitutional. Effective date, this ordinance will be in full force and effect after its passage and publication as provided by law. That's the first reading.
You want to schedule additional readings or waive them?
Can we make a motion to waive the future readings?
Second.
Motion by John, second by Shirley.
Aye.
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 No, you can cease to adopt it.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'd second it.
Motion by Vic, second by Beard.
Aye.
Is there any further discussion?
Aye.
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 I vote aye also. Okay.
Can anybody come to these meetings all the time?
Yeah,
Totally open to the
it's
public
a
every
public
time.
meeting, Jerry, so.
But if
If you
you got,
found it really exciting, just tell all your friends and neighbors and they can come too,
if you got an issue to address, you gotta get it on.
I know.
That too.
I just,
No, you can come any Monday you want.
If you think this one's interesting, some of them are a whole lot more.
yeah, but he was talking about, I made out some of the stuff he was talking
The
about.
road issues, that gets to be
Yeah.
interesting. and how-
I knew some of the roads he was talking about,
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
that helped.
You can come anytime.
All right, Thank
You're
you.
welcome to. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Okay. Official one.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, good. Well, how are things in Florida?
Good.
Was it hot down there too?
Mid-90s every day.
Yeah.
So
Well, if you're
I'm
on,
taking credit for bringing back a little bit of heat.
oh, you sure you want the credit?
We'll get some rain here this week, it'll be.
Didn't sound real promising.
No, it don't.
Next 10 days didn't sound real promising.
No.
We don't.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah, when you look at that Ralph map, it takes in a pretty big area this year.
27% of the country's in the severe already.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, but
Probably 50% of it hanging on the borderline.
well, in the Southwest, it's nearly historic. I mean, it's unprecedented drought. And
South
that,
Dakota again.
oh, those poor guys in Dakotas. Jeez.
yeah, but you get out west, where they depend on the water supply from the mountains.
And there ain't any.
Oh,
Well, Lake Powell is, if you look at those photographs of it, it's just, you can see where the water line used to be.
Said they had they'd had one irrigation trip through, that was it. And they're done.
Yeah.
Well, next on the agenda, we have the Bushman insurance.
Aye.
I,
Okay, so I started, I printed out, spreadsheets for the different locations, the buildings, your equipment, your vehicles. It's got your the address, the description, these are the buildings. Then there's miscellaneous property, like as far as your big pieces of equipment, your excavators, your loaders and such, motor graders. And then the vehicles, and that's broken down by department. So they made a packet for each one of you, just to see what we have insured right now.
It's the first time they've ever had bad news.
So I really tried to clean up what was insured this year because it had been a while since it had been. So ICAP changed some different things on how they listed property out. Anything with a value of less, items that move, excuse me, move from building to building, it'd be on miscellaneous property, you know, like tools, those types of things. And if they have a value of under 10,000, they want to lump those together into unscheduled property. So it'd be more like a blanket type limit rather than list everything out like they have been in the past. There's all kinds of miscellaneous items like the sheriff's department, they've listed out, you know, their CD radios and stuff separately, but those things get updated and not every year it updates. Department sometimes forgets to let us know, hey, I don't have this postage machine anymore, it's none of this. So they're just trying to lump that together as far as that goes. The bigger items, things that are valued over 10,000 or equipment, or if you have ATVs, things like that, that all has to be specifically scheduled. So that's where I just really tried to clean that up. And then the departments went through and kind of gave a list of what they would have for IT, did a really good job of giving me items that they have at each location as far as computer equipment and values. And those limits, unless there's a big item, like a server or something, those are included in your personal property limit per building. So,
And that was last year when they came out and they did evaluation, right?
well, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was just a couple of things that I highlighted when I was going through this, on the buildings, the backside of the first page. Location 2959, there's a recycling pool shed. There's no coverage on the building itself. So I don't know, there's some equipment stored over there. That's why that location is listed there. I don't know if that building needs to have any coverage.
Are you talking about the public building out front?
Well, it says recycling pool shed. Is that where they had like those, they put the bins and stuff underneath there?
So there's one out front and there's one under construction right now out back.
Okay.
That's out of Freeport, right?
Yeah.
So the buildings that they have out there, you've got the big building with the balers, and then there's a pole shed and a storage shed, and then a hazmat building that are out there. So the storage shed, there's 33,000, but on the pole shed, there is nothing on the building itself. So I didn't know if that.
Well, we'll get it updated in the next couple months because they're building a new building.
Okay.
Out there,
So
are they
they-
taking one down?
Well,
No.
they're removing some storage containers.
Canisters.
Okay.
Some semi-trailers were used for storage. and
Right,
they'll
right.
replace that
So they're
storage
gonna
with a.
get rid of those?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
So
okay.
maybe once that's done, we can even just go out there and just take photos and.
Yeah.
Just have an
Get
idea.
it
That'd be
going
good.
out of it, yeah.
And the hazmat building is within a building, so you treat that separately?
That's been listed separately. It's a storage, like a metal building, a
Well,
half
it's
storage building.
outside.
There's one out.
That's outside.
Yeah.
You can walk between the two.
Yeah,
Isn't that the one where you can bring like
Also chemicals.
chemicals and stuff like that for that one? That's what that one is.
assessing.
That's separate.
Yeah.
Because inside,
Separate.
inside, he's got that room where there's the decontaminator or
Yeah.
whatever.
But this is outside.
It's outside.
This is outside of the big building.
That little fence around it there, right outside the big
Well, there's
drop-off door.
essentially two structures outside. There's a household hazardous waste.
That's what this.
That's what,
And then there's the, other building that's got, bins with
That's,
recycling.
she was
Right,
talking about
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Yeah, that doesn't have coverage, which is a new
Yeah.
building. It should-
But this hazmat, that's a separate building. That's where they can bring the
Yeah.
hazmat material.
They drop them off and he takes them inside to
Yeah.
that room to.
Yeah.
Whatever he does.
gotta do.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the value on that building, it seems kind of high, it isn't very big,
Mm-hmm.
but they did get a grant to help construct that, so maybe they used the construction cost. I have no idea what the construction, maybe it's got like super thick walls or something, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Shaky the closed or something, in the.
Okay, so that was one question, and then, the vehicles, this was the back. Okay. So, several years ago, some of the, like the roads department, mainly, they took their vehicles and just put a $10,000 comp deductible on pretty much all of their vehicles that had a specific value or higher. Some of the other ones, and they went with liability only. So and then like the sheriff's department and conservation, they've got lower deductibles on their vehicles. Sheriff's department, I think probably because they're more prone to hit a deer, those types of things. And then recycling, some of their units have lower deductibles too, because there's a pickup that has one. But on the roads department, they had a couple of units that only had liability on them, and I just wanted to make sure that was what was wanted, and that's on like the very last page on the front side. There's a 94 International. I highlighted that in the
Tractor, semi-tractor.
semi-tractor.
Hmm.
And then on the other side of that, there's a 2015, there's two 2015 Fords, and then a 1982 Oshkosh dump truck. So a lot of those units that are that style or that type of vehicle, they've had physical damage on them, so I didn't know if there was a reason why they only wanted liability on
I think
those.
we should talk to Lee and,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that Oshkosh isn't gonna be worth enough to worry
No.
about.
Is that Oshkosh, is that the old snowplow?
Yeah, scrap.
Yeah, that I could understand, just.
But the
Wait,
2015 Ford pickup.
Yeah, those,
I mean, they should, yeah, I mean, they got. It's showing.
Yeah.
At the same time, some of these, anything that's gonna be 10 years old or more, like this 2009 Ford Ranger, I don't know why we're still carrying
Yeah, there,
trump and collision on those.
yeah, there's a lot of.
They get,
Right, there's a lot of vehicles, like, for instance, you got a 99 Ford pickup that still has a or comp of 10,000 on it, so. I don't know, might be a good time to review the vehicles, if they just put liability on these, or, something to that.
Maybe you wanna look at a certain age of.
that's,
of these
it might be
vehicles.
easier from the board's perspective that we just say anything that's 10 years or more or whatever. We're just gonna carry liability and go.
The only thing that you might want to, talk about that is when we talk about vehicles that are 10 years old and older, is if you may have some better dump trucks
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
some bigger equipment where you have
Like pickup.
I'm talking
Pickups.
about.
pickups and cars.
Cars and
Yeah,
pickups, yeah.
smaller vehicles.
Mhm.
Once they get to be 10 years old, just carry liability on
Yeah,
them.
I think so.
Yeah, and I don't know if that would be throughout the county, or if it would just be roads department, or, I guess that would be a decision you'd have to make as the board.
I think the board can make that decision because they're paying the insurance bill, so. It's not like, public health or conservation or whoever has their own insurance line items, they just.
Cause we got two of them Oshkosh's on here, a 74 and 82.
Right, yeah, yeah. But
And actually,
conservation,
those Oshkosh's,
And there's 1980, yeah.
What happened to
conservation
them?
calls,
other than maybe burn up,
1980.
they caught on fire or something,
Yeah,
but as far as like collision and overturn,
yeah.
they're a
They
little bit
got
older.
older, 74 at $79,000, which. They can get paid $79,000.
Probably.
I don't know. That one.
Yeah, because it's an actual cash value policy, so.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
that one seems a little.
I would say that the board should pass I think you should just make a motion that any cars, pickup, road vehicle of a certain age, we go to liability only. But then these bigger units, we should probably talk to the league and see what.
You would look at those on an individual basis. What I would suggest is maybe if you look at any pickups that are 3/4 ton or less, and any automobiles,
That are-
pick an age on it and say, well, we're just gonna carry liability only on those vehicles that are 10, 12, whatever year you decide, or older, we'll just carry liability on those units.
How about the 1 ton pickup, why, is there a reason you're leaving those out?
You could say 1 ton or smaller.
Yeah.
1 ton or smaller,
Cause we do have.
It's like a private passenger type.
yeah, private passenger type vehicles. What you would consider a 1 ton pickup or the truck as a private, almost a private passenger vehicle.
How much would that save us on insurance?
I would like to send it in and then they could, re-quote that out for us.
I'd like to see that number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, even for instance, like conservation is a 2008 PJ tilt trailer. There's comp and collision on it. It's got a value of 5,000. So I don't know. I mean,
I thought it
Maybe
was-
we can make it by a value or years,
Yeah.
you know.
And anything, so any autos and pickups 1 ton or less that are 10 or more years,
Older.
Or have a value
Older.
less.
or any equipment that has a value less than $1,000 or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's what I would say.
I think that's a good qualifier, Dan.
Because what is our deductible? Most of them are.
well, depending
It
on,
varies.
yeah,
Yeah.
depending on what department.
Yeah.
Roads part mostly has 10,000 deductible for, comp. But the other departments, a lot of them have 350 comp, 600 collision. So, okay, so 10 years or older liability.
And the value, and I picked 5,000,
I
I'm
would
like,
say-
yeah, is that?
Yeah, if you got like trailers and stuff that are,
I mean, yeah, you just.
Value less than 5,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cause that's probably what that trailer was when they bought it, new was.
Probably more than likely.
Yeah, it's supposed to be paid for.
So you wanna just make that motion now and have them redo this?
what's the actual mill date?
July 1.
Yeah,
Motion now, or you wanna wait till we get the thing back, what you're feeling?
What age are you thinking, 10 years?
Well, we'll just put a value.
but we're talking like
Yeah.
automobiles and pickups.
You
We've
almost,
got,
Well, if the value, yeah.
we've got 3 more weeks before, we're talking July 1, is that what you?
July 1's renewal, yeah, yep. Why don't we do this? Why don't we take any vehicle, private passenger type vehicle, 1 ton pickups or trucks or smaller, and automobiles that are 10 years old or older, little liability. Any of the other like trailers and things
Trailers,
like that, if their value is $5,000 or less.
yeah,
Just to the liability.
Yeah, to have her send it in, get it quoted out.
And then I can,
Okay.
and then I can
See
send
what
it
it,
out.
how much it actually changes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
See what it saves in.
Yeah, just, well, yeah,
And then you guys can talk about it at your
yeah,
next meeting.
right, yeah.
And then-
do that.
Because you meet every Monday anyway.
Yes.
And then
Yeah,
talk
that
with
sounds
Lee
good.
when you, maybe you can even hop over there and talk to
Okay.
him when you leave here and ask him about a couple of those
Sure.
specific
You
ones.
know,
you
cause you
think
got this,
those 15, you'd think he'd wanna get,
I would
I
have
would-
thought so, but,
Yeah, I
there's
would
just
think you-
sometimes when, I
yeah.
think just people get in a hurry and.
Yeah, you got just missed them. You
Yeah.
could have just missed them.
Yeah.
74 Oshkosh at
Yeah.
8,000, that's,
well, they're only used in extreme
Extreme,
circumstances.
yeah, so they, otherwise they sit
Roll
there.
one, all they do is tip it back over
Yeah,
again.
yeah, cause you get in a
Basically, the only
hurry.
time you use them is snowstorm.
Yeah,
Really bad snowstorm.
Really bad.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Not every day.
No.
no.
I think there are.
Sonny
windows
said he'd have to
with-
burn up, somebody'd have to
Probably
torch
don't
them
use
out
it.
there if you're gonna, the only way they'd ever.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do is, as departments make changes and such, I'm gonna update this Excel spreadsheet because I think it's easier to read than what ICAP sends out as far as their schedule that they have. They're a little bit lengthy. So departments at renewal time, I'll probably just send this out to the departments so that they can look at it and say, okay.
That sounds good.
So, okay, so now for the bad news.
So,
Being you're a new board, you're gonna get the bad news. This is the first time
First
the
time
board has ever
ever.
had bad news since they've been with ICAP.
So, well, Valuations Northwest was out, and I think I came in here and talked to you guys a few months ago about the different buildings that they, went through and they bumped up coverages for several of them. The courthouse was one of them. There was buildings that they found coverage on that hadn't been insured before. So your property limit after all this actually increased by 23 million because of all of the different places that they found that didn't have enough coverage, or, you know, like I said, the
The
courthouse.
courthouse was at 5 or 7 million or something, now it's at 16 million.
That was the biggest one.
That's half of it right there.
Yeah.
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 So, you know, there's just a couple of different places, there.
And that was at our request, we asked, we need to get them out here to revalue it, because
Mhm.
if
So that was
something,
last year when they did that.
if something did happen, there's no way we could even build a.
Well, especially after that tornado hit Marshalltown that I asked.
Yeah.
And that was really,
Well, and with the duration going through, you know, south of us, that was kind of a prompt for people. as
Are most of
far
these
as-
buildings replacement costs?
Yes, yep, so you're on a blanket basis, I think all the buildings are replacement costs, so that way it's a blanket limit. So your blanket limit for property is 61,473,057. So that's what so tornado comes through, once you guys can do that, but that's across whole Winneshiek County.
That'd have to be a pretty creative.
It'd have to be
tornado.
big tornado, big storm, something, but if you have a tornado that comes through Decorah, you've got up to that limit to repair or replace the buildings that you have.
inventory.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so, you know, that's part of the increase. The other part is they just had to they hadn't had a premium increase since 1984 on the property. So they got hit really hard, and it's a trickle down effect, unfortunately, with everybody.
Well, every insurance company,
Yeah.
they're all, they all got hit last year.
And another thing that has kind of prompted some of the increases, the liability went up a little bit too, is because of all the law enforcement issues across the country and liability.
Well, how
issues.
about the big freeze in Texas and,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
all the
all of that stuff.
failed power grid down
Yeah,
there?
all of that affects everybody. So, you know, unfortunately, because ICAP is reinsured, so that's why they have to take those increases to help pay for that reinsurance. So, that being said.
You didn't give us that paper, you didn't have one of them out with it.
She keeps that to herself, you know, she's been doing this long enough.
He really doesn't want to tell us.
Oh, yeah, she's gonna tell you.
I have to, unfortunately. So, you know, I was just comparing last year to this year too. And like I said, the property limit went up quite a bit. So this year, and I should say, since you guys are new too, one thing that we do as our agency, we don't take commission. We just do an agent's fee. So every we have them pull out the commission. We get paid $12,000 to take care of your policies, to take care of your insurance. So,
Just for example, how much is the commission if?
so for example.
Well, no, and they've always known this ever since we took it over. We did this years ago.
15 years ago.
15 years ago when we did this.
Yeah.
We went in and we spoke with ICAP about this. They won't even do this anymore. I think Winneshiek County is probably maybe one of 3 counties that they are doing this with.
So
Where
the
there's,
commission,
we get,
23,000, or 23,000 that if somebody else quoted it,
Mhm.
that you were taking out and just charging us about.
$12,000, yeah.
Yep, so in average throughout the years, for the last 15 years, we've averaged saving the county between 12 and 15,000
A year.
a year. So that's gonna help make up.
How many years?
15.
Well, we have, I think originally we started out at 10. We have asked for, over the years, we've asked for a raise. We may have to do that again next year, you know, but anyway, that's what we have been doing. So like Paris says, we get paid no commission.
Yeah.
The county gets billed a net billing, and then they pay us. That fee is what they pay us. So,
So for instance, last year, your premium amount or your contribution is what they call, because there's if we were paid a commission, there's also a service fee, and then there's called the CRMS management fee. So last year you would have paid 218,641, but that's less 20,000 of commission for us. So I guess anywhere from 8 to 15,000 you save through the years. So this year, the total amount that includes the commission without any of these changes here is 258,492. So that's like 40 grand.
I guess it ain't bad as I thought it would be. I mean,
Yeah.
you're doubling your
What-
personal property.
Yeah, and you're bumping up that amount of property. So-
And the other thing, because a lot of you guys are new members, like last year when they did this evaluation, they increased the coverages last year, but didn't charge the premium. There were no premium charged last year for that additional coverage for the past 12 months.
So, no, I guess, I mean, I would assume it's gonna be.
So
But
do
when
we
you
want
look,
to,
when you look at the courthouse, you know, I mean, that was undervalued.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just got lucky, nothing ever happened.
Exactly.
Just the doom of
Yeah.
it.
I brought over just
Several
several.
facilities.
Yeah, it is.
And I couldn't believe they increased the coverage last year and didn't charge.
Didn't charge anything.
Yeah.
Kind of unheard of.
Well, and you have to understand that ICAP, all they insure is municipalities, counties, cities, public entities. That's all they insure in Iowa here.
Well, the
So,
board members are people like you guys here. They're voted on. Dave Odman has been on the board there
Yeah.
for a lot of years. You know, it's just, so they understand. They know that this is public money that you're dealing with. It's not.
and it actually probably works the other way too. If we sell a piece of equipment halfway through the year, they don't give us a refund. or
It depends on the value of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, so vehicles, yeah, that's right. But like say if you take down a building or something that's valued
then you
at.
wouldn't get it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so the pure premium this year, 258,492, the commission in there is 25,000. So what's billed now, based on what information we have right now, is 233,022. Also in the past, they had, issued member credits. That's not available this year.
because they had a bad year.
It's similar to like having a dividend program. So, yeah, it was a bad year for everybody's.
Premium now is 233.
233,022.72. I mean, now you guys can look at it.
And that won't stay the same.
That, yeah, that all depends on it.
So,
Yeah.
The changes, excuse me, she'll send this in and get the changes back to see what,
See what you can.
based upon that number.
And it might not change a lot if they drop the push and comp on some of these vehicles, but then we add on for those ones that are not listed.
It might be.
Yeah.
It might end up being wash.
Yeah.
I'd rather have it on a 2015 pickup than on a.
Right,
yes.
And that also.
And what,
74 and 82.
Last year, it was last year it was 218, last year 20,000, so about 199, 198, somewhere there.
So it's $40,000.
Yeah. Plus there was a member credit last year, and I apologize, I forgot to print that off. So I did, because right now your property, your buildings and such, they have a 5,000 deductible. I just haven't quoted 10,000 deductible just to see if it would save anything. And it's actually only a $2,500 savings. I don't know if that would.
Not hardly worth it.
No.
No, it doesn't make sense.
One building pays that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was,
But there's like some of them little sheds that were for 2,500 or 3,000, are they still on there or did?
you know, some of them probably are as far as sheds, and that was more for like catastrophic loss.
Oh,
So,
okay.
You're not so worried about it. You just lose one, but if a tornado comes through and takes.
Pools it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Might as well collect when we
Yeah,
did.
right,
this
right,
$16
I mean,
million worth of
Because it's a
buildings
per
put
occurrence
back up.
deductible,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, this can absolutely be reviewed and, you know, we can say, oh, this building isn't worth anything, this is the, you know, there's a 5,000 deductible, whatever. That's entirely up to you as a
I mean,
board.
no amount to a total dollar.
You probably on that building, you might only be paying
And they,
$15.
and I can leave this with two, but I'll take, ICAP actually does a really good job of, on the back of their quotes. You can see what you're paying per building.
So
and
just
what you're
like,
paying per vehicle, so.
Oh, okay.
so for example, can you find like one of these cheap ones quick to just give them an idea? Well, it's like that concession stand at the, I just saw one, it was like called,
Okay, here's
Like Meyer.
here's a $12,000 coverage for $23.
Yeah,
This is at Lake Meyer.
yeah.
and that's 12,000. There were some of these that are just like.
Well, there's a apple cider shelter,
Here's one for,
27.
here's one for $8,280, $16.
Oh, so we ain't paying $2,700.
No.
That'd be,
Here's one for $3,842, $3.
oh, so that ain't.
No,
Like, for instance, the courthouse itself, that's 16.6 million, you're paying 13,641 for contributions, so that's really.
That's cheaper than farmers pay on their farm buildings.
Yeah.
Grape chef.
Yeah.
A house.
Oh, yeah.
Right, house.
Mhm.
So this is a very, I mean, I.
Yeah, that's why I'm just curious on the,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
$3.
Yeah, you can
It
look
ain't-
at that.
It ain't worth the.
Who did the valuation on the courthouse for 16.6 million?
This, it's called Valuations Northwest. ICAP hires this company to go out and do, and that they specialize in buildings that have a limit of 200,000 or more, or like water waste treatment plants and those types of buildings. So, that's what they specialize in.
It's a company that uses, their appraisers and they evaluate buildings. So
And
they probably do it for many insurance companies.
Yeah, and actually, ICAP had hired them, I think it was about a 5-year process where they went to each member. And you guys were just on the agenda for like last year, a year and a half ago, that's when they came to Winneshiek County, but every entity that ICAP insured, they had Valuations Northwest go, and that was a free service that they had for members.
I just know that that's one of the last ones with this top on it in Iowa. And I'm not well versed in historical restoration at all.
Yeah, and that's what they
I'm wondering-
specialize in.
And they do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wonder if that's, if we were to lose that whole building to get it back like that.
And it would be very hard to get it back the
Yeah.
way it was, for sure, because of the age of it, but
Yeah.
just to give you some sort of idea
Yeah.
of what it's worth. Yeah. But yeah, I could probably figure out if I went through each one of these, but they have their system where they just take things in and out and. and they-
No, I was just curious on the building, I mean.
Yeah,
or that,
if you
it would
wanted to have her do that, she'd probably ask for a raise.
No, I'm just curious what,
Yeah.
I mean, I just seen them on there when we had that.
Yeah, but it is nice, I do like how ICAP does that, they have
Yeah.
breakout sheets, and they also break out the liability portion as far as what amount you're spending on, for instance, your secondary roads, the contribution amounts that you're paying is like, for bridges, you're paying 3.43% of your liability premium for bridges. EMTs, the townships, public officials, covering you guys, the contribution amount for that is 15,715. And then you also have your liability limit. You have a 2 million base limit per occurrence, and then you have excess liability of 4 million. So you actually have $6 million of coverage
Per.
occurrence. And there's no aggregate with ICAP, so hopefully this will never happen, but you could have $6 million claims in a year.
Most insurance companies have an aggregate, meaning that for a policy period, they may have like a 2 million occurrence for aggregate, meaning that the most they would pay in any policy period would be $4 million. That's not how ICAP operates. Theirs is just, you have a straight $6 million per occurrence limit. Hopefully you wouldn't have 10 of those in a year.
No.
But you could, so,
Do all 99 counties do ICAP?
no,
No.
about
What percent?
79 of them,
I think.
close to 80,
Yeah.
close to 80,
The majority, I would
the
say.
majority of them.
At least. the most.
ICAP has got what?
I can actually print off a map and
Yeah.
show you what
I'm
ICAP, yeah, no, I can find that and just.
I've seen that
Just
statistic a while ago.
send them
Still
link.
holding true.
And if you update any of this stuff, you could just send the new spreadsheet as a link,
They've
so
got
they
it.
don't have to pay.
I think it's close to 900
Okay.
members in the state of Iowa. Like Tara does it for How many towns you got?
We got several cities and we
Yeah,
got.
she's my ICAP specialist. She's been doing this a long time.
Even here, the landfill is separate, right?
Yeah, the
And,
landfill's
emergency
Fairgrounds,
management.
Winneshiek County, 911 board,
Yep,
Calmer, Castelia, Fort Atkinson, Ocean, Postville.
the
all of
Winneshiek
those.
County Ag
Yeah,
Association.
that's Fairgrounds.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we've got a park and rec board with ICAP.
Yeah.
So,
So,
well, we're not the agents, but Decorah just.
yeah, they switched to ICAP 2 years ago.
Last year or 2 years ago.
2 years ago, the city of Decorah switched to ICAP. They were with EMC and they switched to ICAP. I think it was maybe 3 years ago. Yeah, we're not the agents on that one, but they did change to ICAP, so.
Do you guys have any other questions on?
No.
Oh, so you're gonna send
Thank
me
you.
the new,
Yeah.
new estimate?
Yeah, so I'll just email it. Can I just send it to you and then we'll disperse it? Is that
Yeah,
right?
that'd be good.
Okay.
Do you want them to sign that?
What, if it changes, then. we
Oh,
can-
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but, okay.
We'll get it signed. And part of that, one of the things we sign is that,
That
yes, we're renewing, but you aren't gonna get our premium money until, and then with the date, and so then that.
Yeah, and if you need to
sometime in
block that
July,
early
then-
for us to sign.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess bring it forward.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, yeah, so like Ben said, it's due or coverage is renewed July 1st, but you sign a commitment to continue membership form and then you have 30 days. So you basically have the month of July to get.
To get the contribution, so we
Yeah.
can, we would have trouble making the claim period by the end of the month, but we could get this all looked at and signed by the end of the month and pay it.
Yep.
Which is actually what we would normally pay it in July anyway, so we wouldn't wanna try to pay it this month, because we've always paid it in July and we can't double up that much.
Yeah, you can normally pay more towards the end of July.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your work. Yeah, you bet. Yeah, if you have any questions, you can let me know.
Well, really thank you for that. We really like talking insurance, you know, we really like listening.
I didn't know if you were gonna invite Jared Grandin to stay for the insurance. Yeah, I'm sure you want that.
Yeah, it's always a fun topic. especially-
Well, I'm just anymore, I'm just a pretty face anymore, you know that. Karen does some work and I'm just a pretty face.
Sometimes. you know,
Well, it sure does feel good to have more coverage on the courthouse. Now that we realize what we have, I think
Right.
a little bit more as a community. And you just,
All it takes is one bad day.
yeah,
Well, and, I mean, you guys all know too, building materials. have
Oh,
yeah.
Stupid.
As far as.
And this could be low right now. This was done like a year and a half
Yeah,
ago.
right.
And you look at what the building costs have done, it's nuts.
yeah, it is. nuts.
Could
What
be.
was the estimate for the top on the courthouse, like 7 million or 9 million?
No, I don't even know.
Just to do the,
Yeah.
just to do the dome.
is-
So if we lost just the dome.
Yeah.
No, that was, it was a million.
It was a
But
million.
that was a guess by
Yeah.
Bethany.
Yeah.
We haven't actually had an estimate yet.
Right, but that was,
But that was just the dome, not putting it up or
right,
structural or anything. That was just
Right.
redoing the proper and so on.
You'd be shocked with the scaffolding cost.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's crazy.
yeah.
It's crazy.
And the insurance on the guy that has to climb up there to do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So we'll have an action on this later this month.
Okay.
And Tara will get me information. I'll forward it to you guys to give you a warning when we're gonna stick it on the agenda again, probably in a couple weeks. To give you time to get it all.
Okay.
And you'll talk with Lee, whether you go with him now. I think he's headed back over here to talk to these guys more later this week, but
So maybe we'll just try.
Yeah, we'll just try to catch it.
catch him and at least give him his calendar if you can't get answers right away. And then when you can, and if you go, oh wait.
Oh, okay.
I'll let you know the doors.
Yeah.
Watch out, miss
Yep,
it.
thank you.
And
That door
Thanks.
opens.
It is.
I'm gonna come with you.
Yeah.
We could,
Huh?
we could
Another door
take
should be
5 or
open.
so.
Well, you should have set this up there. I thought it was gonna be a lot more.
I thought you were gonna say 300.
It's a new security, yeah.
I mean, that's.
Isn't that weird?
For the
Yeah,
coverage?
I don't know if they
Geez,
change things.
double your coverage.
I don't usually go in that.
And you only go up
I don't know, but
20%.
Does the fob work on that one or no?
no, I don't think it does.
I mean,
I've
Oh,
never
wait a
had
minute,
one.
I don't know,
Yeah,
because.
especially
hurricanes and all that,
Yeah,
everything.
everything after the year,
I've
we're
never
all
had
destruction.
Well, the last 5, 6,
always been-
7 years,
Yeah.
there's
Well,
catastrophe everywhere,
Interesting.
you know? You need to take that riot in the cities, how much does that cost insurance companies, burn, how much, all them deals.
How about the riot in DC? But that costs a lot
Yeah, I
too.
mean.
Yeah.
every-
Construction,
every
that's
one.
not even done.
Well, that cold weather in the south this year,
That-
and that
She
grid,
hit them pretty hard.
Oh,
grid wasn't
Texas,
even
yeah.
close to being ready for that kind of weather. Man, the losses there.
They should have done the prep work. Yeah.
That was a real eye opener there.
Yeah.
How quickly you can be without.
Yeah. Well,
And it's a large area too.
it taught
Yeah.
people running grids that if you don't have a certain excess capacity, you're screwed. And if you spend a few dollars on weatherproofing, I mean, that's minimal cost
Yeah.
compared to what your losses are. I mean, duh.
But they're down there and they think, well, it ain't never gonna happen.
Well,
That's the
that was
problem.
stupid.
I know.
Yeah. There's no other
It's
word
really
for
big,
it.
John.
It really pissed me off,
Yeah,
you know, because they were, you know,
It
the
was
ERCOT.
preventable. It was preventable.
Yeah, it
And
was.
foreseeable.
Yeah, and, yeah, money lost. Boy,
Weather can get hot in a hurry, like, well, last week here,
Yeah.
40
Yeah.
degrees, you know, or less.
yeah, who would have thought the first
38
week
to
of June would
93.
be 90,
Yeah,
something like this?
damn near 70-degree swing from the bottom,
Mhm.
65 degrees, because we got down to 27 or
Yeah.
something to 93.
Yeah, we had frost not long ago,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Just 10 days ago, not even, you know. Now we're,
well, when you get that jet stream moving around like it does, it just makes for some real crazy switches.
What'd you guys guesstimate, you know, how much we're gonna save by knocking down
I'm not sure.
by the time they
You're
put
gonna
a
notice
few
it.
on, take down.
I don't think we'll notice the change really.
What's that?
If they redo
be.
this.
when they
based
redo
on-
it, how much difference do you foresee?
I don't think it'll
I
affect.
don't think it's gonna be a large.
If there
number.
was 10 if there was 10 vehicles, it'd be
Oh,
$2,000,
you mean on there.
and if a couple more put on, it wouldn't,
Yeah,
and it could be 1,000.
But it should be just a policy anyway that we only do liability.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I think that's
Oh, that's a
just
good-
smart anyway. Yeah,
You know, the newer stuff I understand, but the
Yeah.
older stuff.
Yeah, and when you have that set in place, we don't have to look at it every year, or nobody else
Right.
does, it's just there, and automatically gets taken.
I know Dean Thompson told me, when he came on the board, they found some vehicle stored in a building somewhere that it was like a blade or something, a valuable piece of equipment, and it wasn't covered
We
in
didn't,
that spot or something, wasn't it? Something
we
like
didn't
that,
have
yeah.
any of our big equipment covered
Oh, jeez.
when they started. And
Yeah.
it wasn't a big deal. I mean, we made it for many decades that way. But
Right.
there was a shop that burned down and they lost all their equipment in another county.
Mm.
And when you're talking a blade and a couple dump trucks, and it
That's
could
up.
be a lot of money,
Yeah,
so.
plus, the damage it costs to the people that are affected if you don't have that equipment doing its job. You know, that's a real bad deal. What price do you put on that?
Right, downtime.
As you're seeing right now, you can't just replace equipment.
You can,
Like,
Right.
yeah,
Could be
yeah.
18 months before you even think.
yeah, I know it.
What do you got on the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, I have the recorder's monthly report, a fireworks permit for Harvest Farm Campground, and the minutes.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by
Second.
Vic, second by Beard, all in favor,
Wait, let's see
signify,
this.
any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign, motion passes. Got a lot of stuff to sign,
And
huh?
that's the fireworks permit.
I'm pretty trusting, I just sign whatever. That's how come I got insurance, right?
Yeah, that's right. All of our elected officials, department heads have errors and omissions of insurance. So
Oh, thank goodness.
There's two places to sign on that. Damn stuff there.
This one?
On this
No.
one.
Oh,
Take it
yeah,
out.
it's
It's
got
got
it.
a- You read it again? I didn't do it. Yes. I just passed it on.
Just pass it on.
When we're talking about all that physics going on below a dam or something, or, overflow like that. I remember reading a story back in the floods in '93 in the Mississippi. There's this structure that keeps the Mississippi from going down the Atchafalaya River Basin. And it still takes a lot of water, but during the peak of the floods and this is like millions of yards of concrete and, this massive structure. The scour hole was 150 feet deep, and they said they're on the structure when all that water is going through it and the whole damn thing is shaking.
Oh.
When you think about what's going on there, it's like, oh.
Yep.
Water is on.
Yeah.
Did you make a motion on the consent and I didn't get it written down, or did you just?
We did
Sorry.
not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
It's
I'm
Mark
sorry.
and
Made a
John.
motion, John.
Yeah.
We were waiting to vote, that's right.
Yeah.
We voted on it.
We voted.
Yeah. Everybody voted yes.
You're at water.
I must have been in another country for a little bit.
You were probably looking at that.
I think
Well,
I was looking at that.
That's what happens when you start talking about insurance.
You get so hazy-eyed.
Yeah.
Here's that, like that bridge that comes, there's the Daily Bridge, and then there's they got a little fence here, and here's that area where they were mowing.
Mhm.
And then stakes come, probably, I guess there's the road, and then new stakes, I think there's one there, that's where the new survey stakes are.
There should be,
Cause I'd be on the west side.
the bridge is, this is the bluff here,
Yep,
and the river's going this way.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a ditch here, and the right-of-way stakes come around the corner, and then they kind of go through that ditch.
Shit,
And then
yeah,
they hit
that's,
the water. And I know, we shaped that because we have to get all that water to run out of there, otherwise it's gonna pond out.
and there's just an old fence, they just have
Part of it,
posted, and the new stakes probably split that piece in half.
Yep.
From where the old fence.
Yep.
So if he just wanted to know
John.
if that side, if he put a fence where the snakes are, is that? what he
It's
did?
a metal fence post, and it's got I think they're black on yellow, and it just says ROW on it, and that's right away. So
Okay,
if he stays
but these
right,
here are like them latted pole, the wood ones with
or
blue lath with blue flags on them. Plus, yeah,
ours are always pink.
or maybe it's pink, I can't.
If they're,
But
blue,
they're
that's-
the last, and they're right through, there's one off the bridge a little ways on this side, and there's one off the bridge.
I'll have Mike check it and make sure something hasn't been moved, or there's other,
There could be markings for telephone line or something through.
Yeah.
Oh, no, there's one on this side, one of them stakes on this side, there's one on this side, and there's two of them or three of them up through here. They about split that, what they mowed, they about split
yeah,
that
that'd be
piece in
about
half.
right. That'd be about
Yep.
right,
Mhm.
yep.
So how close can he go to
Right to the back of them.
to the bridge? How,
Well, wherever that post is, it says right away on it. He
By
goes
the
right up
bridge.
to the back of it.
it's
Anything-
only, yeah, if he wants to.
Yeah, if he goes between the bridge and that right of way marker, then he's on the road right away.
Okay,
And that's just, he shouldn't be on that. And
no,
the way it's shaped, we looked at it, we're like,
because then they're probably gonna lose their.
if he wants to put
I mean,
he
he
should
could-
put a fence in, because people are gonna drive on it, because it looks like you can drive right down.
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
gonna
that-
put a fence up there before, wasn't he?
Well, because he did, but because it went to condemnation, he offered to put the fence in and replace it and all that, but it went to condemnation. And when it was condemnation, the cost of the fence and everything was put into that dollar amount, and he was given the dollars. So
he was paid upfront.
he was paid up front, whether he puts the fence in or not. We were gonna do it as part of the project,
yeah.
but because we had to go through condemnation.
I mean, there's only like 2 wires in this one, is catalog.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean,
You guys worked on this long and hard.
So how,
Lee and his
Was there
team
one
worked
down
so
here
hard
by
on
the
this, I can understand their frustration, and
It actually goes straight
it's
across
just
the
too
river.
bad that
okay,
there wasn't a better discussion with the landowners, or they didn't permit it. Didn't, they, if they'd thought
maybe I'll just
what
take
was
a
gonna
look.
happen,
It goes
if they'd known,
straight down,
maybe it would have
across the
worked out
river.
better.
You knew
And
last year.
it
the
loops up and
comments
it
were-
narrows when you get into
And
that.
you
Make
guys
where they
worked
walk
really
down
hard
through the
to
canoe.
try to make this work last
We
year.
did, but
And then-
Sure.
Where the old abutment used to sit, we still have some of that right away. We gave
I
up.
think people need to.
Yeah,
remember
you gotta have
this is
some things
still-
down there.
Yeah.
Still a right of way, so it's not.
I can see his
trespassing
point,
anything.
but I can't get to it.
No, they can't. And
And they
and that's why we
drive,
really wanted to come up with some kind of parking for them. Let's give them some place to go, because they're
But-
gonna,
what's his name, ain't gonna give an inch. He never goes.
no, Jerome, you would,
Until he's got, he never.
you'd
does.
never get anything out of Jerome,
no,
unfortunately.
No.
I mean, I don't fault them. I mean,
That guy I talked to, he said, why don't they go out to the DNR down the river a little ways and have them put one?
and we talked to the DNR, and the DNR's,
They don't
they're
have-
all puffed on theirs. It's not a nice
Oh.
gradual.
It's not a feasible
Feasible
thing,
deal.
it's not at
They
all.
just, they said it wouldn't, they didn't have a problem with
Cause
it.
Joe's got Jerome's got the rest of it all around the whole thing.
Yeah.
doesn't he?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And really, you know, you think about tourism in our county, what are we gonna do? Put up a, you know, a Tyrannosaurus electric fence to keep people out of the stinking river, you know, I mean, people are in the, I think we just have to, from here on out, and Lee, I think is trying to plan, you know,
Yeah.
we're gonna have
That's what
these
it should be,
people.
either the DNRs or soil and water conservation, that's kind of their, that would be their deal.
Like with,
Yeah.
with the Chimney Rock Bridge, you know, Barb had a canoe landing there. But when we put the new bridge in, we upgraded that canoe landing, we gave them a turnaround, and then we were able to do a lot of stuff, but it was conservation's land, we were able to do that. A lot of the privates, and I don't blame them, I mean, I sat and talked with Kelly Thomas and Jerome quite a bit, and, you know, when Kelly walks to check his field and he's stepping in poop, you know, garbage, people drop a
Yep.
bag of it,
Yeah, we
that
were,
would get frustrating for me too. I
and we
don't,
were standing there
Yeah.
talking and some people got out, I knew who they were. 2 bags blew out of their car, blowing across the thing.
Yeah.
And he just points, right there's one.
I know,
You know, they didn't care.
that's a problem
leave
with
gates
public
open.
land everywhere, Mark, you
And
know.
I don't,
it's-
same way with these snowmobilers, right? You know, you got,
Walmart was
yeah.
Yeah, oh, I bet.
You know, you got glass bottles and you got.
they leave
this,
gates
you got-
open, and
Yeah,
he's gone down there and I'm surprised they haven't lost cattle, because
yeah.
they
Yeah.
open the gate, they don't shut it.
And I
down.
can see it, I mean, I know, yeah.
That'd be frustrating as all get out.
Yeah.
Well, we're cutting in
Okay.
Mr. Berland's time here,
Yeah.
so we're gonna move ahead and have Mr. Berland come up with one.
Hi, Cole.
Hey,
All right.
There's no papers in his hand. He's got it all in his head.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
Usually
It'd be a short meeting.
Well, I mean, I guess, kind of going back to then kind of starting this whole process, which has been very, very good so far. You know, asking
A
about.
year from now, you can.
Well, let's see. Asking if we provide some assistance with, reporting and administration and trying to figure out eligibility and things, various issues with our American Rescue Plan funding. And so we've started down that route with a couple of different counties and had a work session over in Fayette County last week that was pretty productive, I think, for them. Met with Alan Keep supervisors earlier this morning and kind of talked through the process a little bit with them, and they're excited to get a work session with them in a couple of weeks. And then, going to Howard County and Chickasaw County next Monday, and
Wow,
Buchanan the Monday after that, and try to slide in Clayton County sometime in there too. So, so I think, a couple purposes, obviously, behind it. One, to help. Auditors are plenty busy with all the things that they typically have to do. That we can take a little bit of load off of their plate. That would be good, and it probably doesn't hurt to have somebody that's asking questions on behalf of all of the counties. And a lot of the counties can be dealing with similar issues, or something might come up in one county that a county hasn't thought about that, oh, well, we can think about that potential use, that's a need in our county too, and helping, through that process. Sitting on the phone with Treasury and waiting for listening to the music play before you finally get through to something, you're waiting.
But it's better to have one person doing that than all
Exactly.
7 of us,
Right.
auditors trying to do it, so.
I'm wondering if it'd be efficient and beneficial to have a multi-county meeting, so you can talk about it to everybody at one time, and we can hear all the ideas together.
Yeah, I think, you know, at a certain point, maybe in a month or so, that would make a lot of sense. You know, have a work session, you know, a county, multi-county work session.
Yeah, I think it would be quite beneficial to hear what other people are thinking.
Yeah.
It might stir some other ideas up too.
Yeah.
I'd like to comment, we heard earlier that, the simpler we keep it, like 1 or 2 major projects, it's easier paperwork wise. And
It would be,
Yeah.
you know, from a reporting standpoint, but, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and say,
Right.
yeah, push it that way,
Right.
because I mean,
Right.
I'm not afraid of.
Well, we wouldn't want to make the winnowing process as to which ones we pick prematurely, you know, I
Right.
think we'd want to
I'd
consider
love to hear. other
our
people's
options pretty well.
So if you want to maybe review, obviously, we've talked about a couple times, but we'll do, our first priority will be to replace any lost revenue. So, and Paul and I are already been talking about how we're gonna do that. Because that money, if we can get it from the rescue plan into our regular county funding, then it's no longer restricted by the rescue plan use. So that's our first priority, and I think probably pretty obviously, one of our second priorities should be is funding, public health expenses that were directly related to response. So, whether it's some of their overtime hours or comp time hours, buyout, or their renting facilities or whatever, we'll get those. I mean, those are pretty obvious. But then we need to make a list of ideas and start prioritizing them and patching some numbers and so on. And that's where Paul's already having talked to some of the other counties. And, I visited with him when Andy and I were talking with development on the child care facility, whether that would be, funding for that would be eligible or not, and so on. And so he threw out several ideas, and I think that would be a good place for you to start, and for those things we talked about there.
Yeah, yeah. So we did talk with, Stephanie and Laura about the childcare. I know they haven't already, they're planning to make a request to you guys for some funding for that project. And so we were looking at what potential aspects of that may or may not be eligible for this funding. Certainly any of the green infrastructure and stormwater runoff management that they're planning to do there is very easily eligible. Looking further into it, childcare centers are actually identified as an eligible funding expense if you're in a qualified census tract or an area that has been disproportionately impacted by COVID, you know, typically from a social standpoint or an economic standpoint, which I think Decorah, we'd have a hard time trying to justify that standpoint. There's no qualified census tracts in any of our 7 counties that we serve, which is a good thing, looking at quality of life and those sorts of things. But and so that from the direct childcare standpoint, it makes it challenging. There is a provision in there that talks about providing support to the tourism industry that has been adversely affected, and you know, looking at that Discovery Center portion of it, that would obviously be a very large tourism draw. You know, just looking at the Children's Museum in La Crosse, and you know, how many people flock to things like that, that I think that piece of it, we could probably get cleared as an eligible expense. Looking at there's a line in there that talks about any expansion or improvements to tourism or that were sort of in the plans would be potentially eligible. So I think that that component of it,
So whatever dollar amount the board decided to fund, if that didn't exceed the amount the project is spending on their wastewater discharge and the strictly Discovery Center portion, we could say it's designated towards that portion.
correct.
Because most of their funding is gonna be undesignated, so they can shift their other funding then to the child care.
Correct. Yep. Correct.
They had mentioned some of the education pieces being green related to.
Yep, yep.
That could help.
Depending, if they're of the stormwater, water pollution, non-point pollution, that sort of aspect. You know, if it's green, like green energy things, well, then it's a little bit more complicated, just based on what's eligible through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. So that's certainly, you know, one thing that I think would be something to look into.
And I would think that whatever amount they decide to request and the board decides to approve, probably won't exceed the portion that they can attribute to the Discovery Center. So
Correct.
that's gonna probably make just the negotiation between them and the board then to decide
Correct.
the dollar.
Not to get off, or is that a go ahead that gonna be, or is that just still in the making?
They're still doing fundraising. as far as I
Fundraising,
know.
they gotta come up with enough to make it.
Yeah, they do. You know, I think in my discussions, I think it's gonna be a go.
Go.
Yeah.
I think that they're hoping, and so, you know, you don't wanna overcommit this money, obviously, but they're hoping to get a commitment out of the board sooner opposed to later, because that will help them leverage other funding sources.
Yeah.
So yes, they may ask you for a commitment before you're ready to finalize your priority list, but I mean, there's a big pot of money here, and the amount they're asking isn't going to use it all up. So,
Correct. Yep. You know, some other things, I know I see Barb's on, you know, she's got a couple of potential stormwater retention structures in that Nesky Valley that we've talked about. Those would certainly be an eligible practice under that stormwater section. Any sort of other stormwater related conveyance or infrastructure would be an eligible expense. You know, Lee and I think it was Joel maybe that brought up on-road structures during the 6-county meeting. That's certainly something that would be eligible. You've got bridges, culverts that need to be replaced, and we've got willing landowners that would be willing to sign into an inundation agreement. You know, you could replace those with a structure that then held back water temporarily to reduce that stormwater and flood intensity. That's something that Fayette County is definitely looking at with these funds. One of the things that they're looking into. I know they've got a campground that they're looking at potentially running a sewer line to hook into a neighboring this infrastructure.
So Barb brought that up. She's gonna need septic, sewer, and water, potentially at the new campground site. Is that,
Yes.
any of that?
Yes. Definitely eligible. Yeah. So.
That's tied right into economic development and tourism.
Yeah, yeah, and it hits that, yes, infrastructure from the Clean Water Revolving Fund as well.
And so the one that was brought up that I had gotten a request that and I'll pass it on to you, and I think I mentioned it the one day, is the Pacific Sewer Project, which would qualify, because we're already qualified for state revolving loan funds through but then the real question is will that be one you want to fund? I mean, we're all qualified and did theirs, but they're paying for it themselves because theirs was done before this program, this money was here. And actually, Freightville qualified for state revolving funds for their water system, but that was done long enough ago, so they're paying for it themselves. So yes, the money's here and it probably qualifies, but will you want to help the one group without, that you couldn't really help the others?
That'd be a touch.
Well, the money wasn't there.
There again, yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing, how about that road that we're putting into the campground? Could you recoup any of that or not, or is that, we did that beforehand to?
I don't think.
You
any-
haven't put it in, but
Haven't put it in yet.
but roads and bridges in general aren't not unless you can show their stormwater.
Okay.
Well,
And you can't use the money to recoup money you've already budgeted for projects.
not knowing where those retention structures need to go. And, I mean, the road sits pretty high on the property. I don't think
Yeah, there would be no way
the
to get
retentions are going there, but if we're short material to get the road built up, because we want to have it higher than everything around it. The material that comes out of that retention basin could go into building the road bed. And we don't have to bring it in from somewhere else. So, I mean, we do save ourselves a little bit of work if we can get the material.
How about utilizing the tourism aspect of the campground? Would there be a way for the county to fund some of that through that aspect?
Potentially, yeah, that's a component of it that's not very strongly defined in the interim rule. It's there, but there's not then a list of here's the sort of things that it talks about implementing measures that would allow places to reopen or to, expand capacity, so to speak, related to COVID or a future, COVID we might be dealing with or whatever, as far as social distancing or, sanitation procedures, those sorts of things. And then it also talks about expansion of or implementation of things that were either in the plans or that would enable the expansion of tourism. So, that's something.
We're still
We
operating.
start talking about those things that aren't very clear, and that's where I think, we would come in and help try and get an answer based, ahead of time before the county would.
Commit to it.
Yeah, the last thing I want to do is get down this road where now all of a sudden, the auditor is looking into it.
Yeah.
The state auditor is looking into it, and then we're going back and forth and trying to have a.
Like that.
Things like
Yeah.
that.
I don't know what Barb's timetable, I know we've talked about it in the past, about if she has a timetable that road has to be in by.
Barb,
For the most part, we've done most of the design on it. It's not done, but most of it is ready to go.
Yeah,
And she had an architect working on the campsite layout and with it.
Yeah.
We were trying to get worked in with that, so we're not making life miserable for each other.
So last year, our hangup was with the grant source, and they finally have approved us. We had to have cultural affairs go in and we had to write a management plan for all the buildings. And so now we're good to go. I guess we may want to just hold off and I'll work with Paul, and we don't want to start anything if there's potential to be able to be funded through these funds.
Yeah, I agree.
is there any way that affordable housing could be looked at through the American Rescue Plan?
housing is a challenge. There is a provision in there for direct assistance to individuals that were at, disproportionately impacted. But it then also says in there that affordable housing is, sort of this separate thing that's not, so you could provide rental assistance or something like that to individuals through this funding. But again, defining that population becomes the bit of the challenging piece to that. But it's not something that, I mean, when I say it's challenging, it's still something that, we can look into it, we can explore it further. If we want.
Like Paul mentioned earlier, we're still under the interim rules, and they're being reviewed and commented on and so on, and so we will get a final rule sometime this summer, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. I think the deadline to comment is July or something, yeah.
So the first allotment comes this year, it has to be
We actually
spent
have it
by,
in the bank,
and it has to be spent by,
2024.
So it has to be
So
committed,
obligated by 2024, yeah.
committed by
End of
2024.
24.
and then spent by 2026.
Okay.
And the two halves that have the same deadline for the spending. I mean, there isn't,
Right.
it's just that we didn't get it all.
Two different
Yeah,
chunks.
yeah.
The whole work says be by 2026. So.
Spent by 2026, but obligated by 2024. So you don't, we have time, right?
So the 3.8.
3.8, little over 3.8 million, yeah.
Half of which Ben requested and got, and then the other half to get next year about this time.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and actually it does very clearly state that, any interest through these funds does not have to be tracked through the.
So where are you investing it in the meantime?
That's for Brenda to decide. Right now, she just has it in a bank account because of not knowing how soon or what we're doing with it. If we decide, okay, we're gonna do these projects, but they aren't gonna be for 2 years, then she can look into investing it longer. But until then, she's got it in a bank account, so even if she's only getting 0.5%, whatever it is, it's still a big chunk of money, so she is getting interest on it.
Okay.
And there's issues with our deposit limits at the banks, so she can't put it in the bank that gets the best interest rate, because she's already got that pretty much maxed out, so unless we wanna change our deposit limits and work with the banks to do that, we just she put it in one of the local banks here just to get it, and we'll figure out what to do with it in the long term once we have a little better handle on it. But that's all her value.
Could we pursue a gathering of several counties at one time so that it could be kind of a brainstorming session among counties? It's not something that necessarily every single supervisor from every single county has to go to, but I think it would be beneficial to hear other ideas.
I think so.
It might save you some time too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm kind of excited to hear what the counties are doing,
Me
and look
too.
at what's eligible, what's not eligible, and things, there's the provisions in there for, making improvements to public facilities related to COVID and future pandemics, such as, like you guys obviously have a great setup here now to have virtual meetings, but a lot of places, they still don't have that, so that would be an eligible expense.
Mhm.
And there's many of the things we've done, whether it's the camera and some of the things that we were able to already claim either through FEMA or CARES Act. So, and another key thing is that this only can go back to money spent March 1st, right? This year.
I think it's March 3rd or 13th, sometime, yeah.
This year, except for the lost revenue clauses.
And except for the, I believe, back pay for
Oh, yes.
the essential workers that were dealing with that.
Just the past March.
Yeah.
Just a couple
So
months.
you can't go back and say, well, we put in these, whatever it is, the special drinking fountains or the cameras or whatever, because
They're long,
yeah,
But I think that other CARES Act funding, I think. they
Covered most of
covered
that.
A lot of that.
and FEMA, and we got FEMA money for some of that stuff, so.
One other thing is that calculation, when you're figuring the counterfactual revenue based on, and then your actual revenue, to take money off for revenue, I guess, lost revenue, you can do that calculation at 4 times throughout, based on 2020 calendar year, 2021, 2022, and 2023, figuring a 4.1% growth rate every year from your last fiscal year. So it's kind of
19 would be the baseline.
confusing. Your fiscal year, fiscal year 19 as the baseline, but then these calculations are based on calendar year. So
And how would,
but then it calculates 18 months from your last fiscal year with that factor, so it's actually about a 6% increase based on your last fiscal year for the first calculation. And by the time you get to the fourth calculation, it's almost a 20% increase from your fiscal year 19, so. And I'm interested to look at some numbers.
yeah, and we're still trying to figure out, I mean, the real question is, because they say about our total revenues basically, but then they say you can take off federal revenues and so on. But I'm really curious as how much they'll let us break that down. And so that's what we need to figure out. Can we look at, I mean, there are things like camping fees and passport photos and sales tax that we can directly say were affected by the virus. But then, take something like this mental health, the reduction in the mental health levy due to the state taking over the funding. Does that mean if they're looking at it as a revenue as a whole, are they saying, well, we can use this to make up that difference? That had nothing to do with coronavirus, but it is a lot reduction in our revenue. So we need to be able to know how they're gonna look at it.
Are we able to look at funds that aren't managed by the county, like the road use tax fund?
Should be a general revenue stream. How is it? Is it not?
It is, but the county doesn't manage it, the state manages it.
Although you did get, CARES Act money pumped in there to make up for the lost.
Well, that's what it was for, but I don't know, I mean, that money came in, and I don't know what the state did.
Yeah.
I know that when they digged it out, they just used the same formula, because it's in place, why would you do anything different?
So yeah, we need to figure out how the rules are specifically written, if we can look at single revenue streams and figure out if we can look at those versus, because otherwise property taxes shouldn't really be affected because our values are set, and you set a levy rate and people had to pay their property taxes. Yes, they didn't have to pay interest on the late property taxes for about 6 months, so we might be able to look at penalty interest loss, but that they still were due. And so that isn't gonna be affected by the virus.
But they increased 6% too from that time.
Right, well, and then, so our bad thing is that we had a kind of a sizable increase for this fiscal year because we took on the, funding of the dispatch center and increased our levy rates to do that. So that property taxes are definitely gonna be higher this year because of that, but that doesn't really have anything to do with the program.
That's not done anything.
Yeah. So that's why we need to look at those rules, and Paul and I need to really sit down and look at some numbers, how we can.
That'd be very interesting.
Yes.
And if it's zero, then it's zero. Yeah.
I'm hoping that we at least can take some of our very defined revenue streams, like local option sales tax, and say, here's what it should have been, and then calculate it out and see if we can get some extra money.
Yeah.
Or some of the smaller ones, like I mentioned before.
Mhm. So could RC&D do some type of multi-county presentation in the fall or something? I mean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, we could do it, I think, at any point.
What would work best into your calendar?
I think we could do it later this summer. I know, there's not a huge rush.
Right.
You know, we do have some time, which is
Right.
great. I mean,
It might be good, not that I'm saying we need to put it off, but in August is the ICAP annual conference.
Oh.
And the first day, that Wednesday that week, which is the 25th or whatever it is in August. Anyway, that day, there's a session that's like
The 25th.
all day devoted to American Rescue Plan funding ideas.
And they're not putting any of it online,
I
which is
don't,
frustrating.
yeah. So that might be a good place, at least then counties that do have people who go, or even if you wanna go, I know guests can attend within their limits, if that's something you want to hear
That's such a
more
bad idea.
statewide, yeah. And then bring those back and have our meeting after that with what we're gonna do closer.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I know, Allen County was talking about some mental health potential, public health, mental health. Was talk about we had a radio tower or communication tower discussion. Fayette County asked if this, in some way, the broadband aspect, is broadband's another thing that you could fund through this, if that would tie in, and it, they couldn't then figure out how they tie broadband to, those towers, but, trying to figure out if there was some sort of tie-in there. I don't know if there is, but, I think it'd be a challenge.
It seems like a stretch.
Yeah, narrow band versus broadband, and I don't know how those would then feed out to other people, but, just sort of how wheels are turning and trying to figure that out. There's a lot of other grant funds out there for broadband, currently that, I don't know that these funds, while eligible for that, I think there's, some other things that probably make as much sense or more.
Especially right this year, next year, when the state funding, they increased their funding, like tripled their funding to ISP providers to expand their networks, and we'd just be competing for a limited amount of material and contractors. But maybe 2 years out from now, we see how that all works through, and maybe then, if that dies out, then we can think about it.
I know right now there's a huge shortage in fiber optic cable too, but just like everything else that there's a shortage in, but that's something that's really tough to get right now.
To get the good stuff.
Well, that's right, there's
the fly-by-nighters, and then there's the.
I was gonna go to the ICAP conference, but it's right during our scheduled extended family vacation. So is anybody else around the table going?
I'm planning to go.
It's a great, so I don't know, would we be able to help Paul go as our guest to do that research for us, or one of your representatives?
I mean, depending on dates, it's certainly
August
possible I could go for that.
26th through the 31st.
I only have to go for that one.
But Wednesday
one-
is
that
the
one day.
rescue plan day,
Oh,
and
I mean, I'm sure there'll be discussion
They did a
about
good
kind of
job,
throughout,
yeah.
but,
That'd be.
so, and we have confirmed that the rescue plan dollars can be spent to pay you as a manager.
correct.
And that would probably be an expense that you could just bill back to it also, because you're going to do.
yeah.
And especially if we're doing it for at least 5 counties and potentially 7.
I think it'd be
you
really
divide
beneficial.
an hour into each of the counties,
Yeah.
it becomes,
Yeah,
not much of an expense at that point.
Yeah.
If you're available.
Yeah, I'll check when I get back and see. Because it would be good to not, to make sure that we're not looking at something that then they're looking at something a different way, and then all of a sudden we've got confusion in the bound and those sorts of things. But, yeah, I mean, I think ideally the county would be able to use these funds on things that you were already hoping to do or already thinking about doing, or would be very beneficial, and you can figure out where those funds are gonna come from, as opposed to just what's the easiest way to get rid of the money. But there's some of that too sometimes when you're jumping through.
Well, we're presented with such a unique opportunity with this, and keeping everybody in the county in mind. What's the best use of this money to serve the most people in our county, and in what way?
A couple other things we haven't really touched on. There is a provision in there for helping nonprofits and small businesses that were, again, adversely impacted by COVID. To do that, you'd want to probably set up a grant program that you would administer. Challenge being then is you've got to make sure that they actually spent the money on eligible expenses, and so now you've added this other layer of
That's interesting though. With
administration and management to make sure that, and then setting up a provision of how you get the money back if they end up not spending the money on an eligible expense.
But this year in particular, that's really interesting with these other conversations we've been having, so I think we should look.
And
deeper
so
at that.
there is some question, and the state auditor's office will probably weigh in on this,
Yeah.
but if the federal government allows it in the ARP, but the state has some sort of restriction on what public funds can be used for, then does that supersede what the federal government would have allowed? So.
Exactly.
Yeah, and to that point, which is kind of stepping aside, I actually talked to Rob Sands, I guess, end of last week about that, and just kind of get some clarification from him. And he said, actually, it's been state law for a long time. Counties can't give money to nonprofit organizations if they don't have an agreement for, for services or what it's going to be. So it's been state law for a long time. He said it's not something that they're really trying to bring a hammer down on, but they feel like because of the law, they should follow it and let people know. And so, I did ask him about, from a nonprofit standpoint, what we needed there to be able to, satisfy that if it was an actual 2080. And he said 2080 would work, but he said you could also just do a contract that says, here's what services.
And Andy.
Under the American Rescue Plan.
No, this would be.
In general?
Just in general, yeah.
But Andy's working on that now.
Andy is working on that now, and so we probably are gonna be hitting you up for signing a contract or 2080 anyway.
Yeah, so.
Outside the American Rescue Plan.
Yeah, and that's something we're gonna have to work with all counties. Chickasaw County just sent a letter out to us, and I imagine any other nonprofit that they gave money to, say that in order for them to give any funding, we'll need a 2080 in place with those.
Yeah. And Andy, actually, we met briefly last week after we got done with Laura, visiting with Laura and Stephanie Brown, and talked through it a little bit, but then he was gonna be gone again, including now, so we're looking at maybe next week getting together, finalizing some details on those.
Great.
Any other questions, thoughts? I don't know about entering a formal agreement, what you guys would prefer there. Fayette County, I think today is approving to hire us to do administration at reasonable and consistent rates or something along those lines. And so
That's something we should look at putting on the agenda for next week, Ben?
Well, Andy'd have to look at that one. to do some
Maybe
type of
tomorrow.
a contract.
Contract or something,
But we should
if you want to,
do that.
once you get one from one county, maybe,
Yeah,
but
that's
they
what I
put
figured.
together something.
Yeah.
hey,
Hopefully, I figure
Yeah.
once we had it, then we just.
Yeah.
think around and I'll-
Here it is.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Charge.
Yeah, and then, I mean, if you guys have questions or things pop in your head about, hey,
It
it's.
sounds like there's a lot of questions.
Would
yeah.
that be, would this be eligible? Would that be eligible? With, sorts of things. That's, I think that's,
Well, until they finalize everything, though, we're still gonna
Gotcha.
be up in the air on a lot of this stuff, aren't we?
potential, but there's a lot of it that they're not, they're not gonna say all of a sudden that, Clean Water State Revolving Fund eligible practices are no longer eligible in the final rule, those sorts of things. I mean, if there's any clarification, I think it'd be, defining some of those things that are currently less defined, so to speak.
What would be the best way just for, what's his name, the sewer guy from Washington,
Oh, sure.
that he's the one who called me about the Festine project.
Don,
Don, yes, Don, when someone like that calls and says, hey, if you keep putting me on the list, what do you suppose would be the best way for me and for the board, how we should put this together to kind of keep it so everyone knows that who's been contacted about what?
Mhm.
I mean, should we? It would be good to have you in on the loop too, so set up some kind of Google spreadsheet that we all would have access to, name of the contact and what the project is about, and, so we can have kind of a running list, so we don't forget somebody. I'd hate to tell someone, yeah, I'll make sure to mention it, and then 2 weeks later, when we get a chance to talk with you, and then I forgot, and how come my project wasn't considered?
Maybe that's part of the agreement with you for this scope of work.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly set up a Google sheet and then, the cost estimates or whatever you might be on, on there.
I mean, that might be a good idea, just because I've had half a dozen calls or more already of people, what about this, what about this, I'm like,
Be nice for you to just type it in real quick and.
yeah, and at least then it's on our list.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Yeah,
So the next meeting for RC&D is the 24th, right?
we may have to move that.
Okay,
But yes, that was originally what it is, but we may have to postpone.
okay,
I may be in DC.
okay.
So,
Wow.
yeah. And I thought Amanda would be able to run the meeting, but now that.
Is Bill
She's
Sack
very pretty
hiring
honest.
you away from us?
What's that?
I said, is Bill Sack hiring you away from us?
No. This would be a vacation. So, yeah. So,
I'll just watch the email.
yeah. That should be upcoming here shortly.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So I think one point just to make to Barb and Lee, since we have you here, that we are quite certain that the on-road structures, possibly some of these mini structures with culverts that restrict flow, the structures in the dry run creek, and sewer project at the campground are all gonna be able to be covered, so next step is to kind of start getting some numbers, that, how much, and we'd like to know, is that gonna take half of the money we already got, or is that gonna take a quarter of the money we already got, and then we got another chunk of money coming in a year from now, so that might give the board an idea of what we're working with, so.
yeah, how many projects you can actually.
Yeah, I mean, you'd hate to get, oh, we gotta get this big list, and now you've got $6 million of projects with $3.8 million. So let's, for those that are qualifying, why don't we work on that? So the road or expansion of the campground, as far as how it might work into the tourism or the child care center and how it might work into tourism, we don't know those for sure yet. So don't prioritize those, work on the ones we do know. And go from there.
Well, and the components of those that we we're pretty sure that would be eligible.
Yeah.
But, to that end, I guess, one other thing I did talk to Matt Frana about, that Iowa watershed approach project we've got, and there may be a project or two at the end of that, all of a sudden we just run out of money there. It's kind of a real challenge to try and spend exactly the dollar amount that we've got there, when you're doing 90% of projects. So, that's a potential too. Those projects would
So that'd
all
be
be
start with the
eligible.
road ditch or.
Yeah, and we identified more sites beyond what they've developed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're out there, we knew a finite number, and like you said, we're trying to hit that number, and that's difficult.
Get the severity of, or the worst ones, at least, or all.
And when you're talking about the maximum number of people benefited for dollars spent, reducing flooding affects a lot of people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whereas, some of these are gonna be more specific to who it's assisting, so.
All the way through Allen County.
Well, and hopefully we're protecting some downstream infrastructure.
Yeah.
Winneshiek County as well before we get to that point. But I've got to call in to have a conversation with the folks at IEDA who are administering those HUD funds to talk about if we use outside funding from another federal source with that funding, like what's the intersect there with the contracting and those sorts of things? Or is it easier for us to just say, okay, well, we're not going to let this project, if we're going to pull it out of that project.
The
and
HUD
just
has
have
a
it as-
match requirement.
It did have a very small match requirement,
For
but
private landowners.
private landowners had 10%, nothing.
But
for
not on the
counties,
public.
Nothing on the
Yeah,
public.
that's what I meant.
Yeah. But trying to figure out at what stage do we, ideally, any of the projects we would do that were designed through that, get credit through that program of projects implemented through those,
Right.
but if we're then gonna be tied to some sort of requirement that makes it a bigger challenge if we bring in these other funds, to just try to see how those.
Yeah.
Do we pick a project we're not yet very far along with that and say, okay, this is one we're gonna fund, or do we just say, we're gonna pull that other one?
Might be a lot easier to start those from scratch. just to
Exactly.
Get rid of that interface of the funds, going the same stuff.
Yeah. Then one federal program versus the other and trying to figure out what we're.
I'm sure that's not gonna go well. 'Cause I know federal programs would be.
Yeah, so I've got it might not be as simple as just saying, well, we've got, this project, we could, here's the cutoff, and we could fund half of it, but we can't fund 100% or 90% of it. Can these other funds come in and cover that portion of it? Ideally, that's in my mind, how that would work best, is to make sure that we can get all the ones we've got prioritized now.
And consulting for fees, we can go after that too. If we already have a consultant on board that's developing these drawdowns.
I would imagine that for those funds, that engineering would be an eligible expense.
I would hope so.
That's something I can.
And there's no match requirements to any of these funds at all. I didn't read it in there, but I haven't read parts of it.
The only thing it talks about match is that these can't be used as considered non-federal match to another match, so you can't use these as match, but.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty standard.
Yeah, and there's some other, can't use these funds for contributions to stabilize retirement programs.
Yeah.
But you can use it to pay like an example, the Piper's portion of a payroll tax or the payroll withholding that's attributable to overtime or bonus pay related to coronavirus. So it says in there, we can't use it for Piper's, but you can for those specific cases.
One other thing is you could use it to bring, staffing up to pre-COVID levels. If you did have a decline in staffing, between January 27th as of January 27th, you could bring it up. Staffing levels. But I don't, it's one of those things where, I think Joel was trying to figure out in Fayette County, well, they had a couple of positions that they've added on, you know, and he knows they lost a few positions somewhere else, so would that be, you know, here you're kind of, you know, moving pieces around to try to figure out if that would be fine, but, you know, and then there's no real definition for how long you can fund those people, or,
Oh, right.
you know, it's sort of,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, there's,
It'll be interesting to see how this moves through the next few months and what each county decides. to
yeah,
do.
and I've heard rumors that some counties are saying, oh, we're just gonna spend it on this. I don't think that's gonna be eligible, that they.
There should
Well,
be
you don't wanna
plenty of places to spend the money.
Yeah, and you don't want to get in a position of having done it wrong and having to go back.
The state had that last year with some of their CARES money, they bought
Right,
computer equipment that ended up not being,
not part of it.
and they had to pay it back, yeah.
Yep.
So,
I'm sure it won't make the news if you guys spend it on something.
Oh, sure.
I'm just glad, I'm glad it'll be Paul's picture on
Yeah,
the front page,
exactly.
not mine.
Exactly. That's why I'm gonna make sure that anything that isn't.
Reason you
is
wanna
clearly
do
defined.
this.
Well, and I'm gonna make sure that I have an answer that is,
Right.
you know, defined, whether it comes from the treasurer or from the state auditor's office, that says, yes, we deem that to be ineligible. If there's something in that gray area that we're not quite sure on.
3.8 million. I mean, I gotta talk with Matt some more too, but, I mean, the HUD was 5?
All told, but actually construction dollars.
About 4
was-
for construction.
yeah, About 4.
I mean, that's, you look at what we built with that, to get to 3.8 won't take long.
Mm-mm.
No.
So, I mean, I do see that we, like Ben was saying, we got a list of $6 million worth of stuff we'd like to do. I can see us getting that, LTVs.
Easy.
I mean, there were counties when this program was announced 2 months ago or whatever, that like, we don't have, we'll just end up sending it all back, because we aren't having anything to depend it on, and I think as they've started researching it more, they realize there are things that,
You know, we just don't wanna be like the state, step on our toes.
right.
But there's a lot of counties, Lee, that don't, you know, non-road structure is completely foreign
And
idea to them, or something that
Well,
they're
there's some
having adverse to as well.
they just, the terrain doesn't allow it. I mean, they just can't build them.
Well, you get down into central Iowa and they're trying to get the water out as fast as
Right.
they can, whereas we're trying to pull it out.
Hold it back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, every county isn't gonna have the same options, that's for sure.
But any sort of green stormwater infrastructure, you know, is an eligible expense, so if there's, you know,
Maybe,
rain gardens or park bioswales, or, you know,
porous pavement.
or, yeah, permeable pavers, things on.
There's a spot for your
lots, you know,
parking lot.
You know,
Get your
those sorts
parking
of
lot.
things are all eligible expenses.
You just gotta-
You know, if you had a drainage issue going on, you know, in some parking lot or whatever it might be.
Those
that
porous
would be-
parking lots work, I mean, they build them in freezing states, they work better where it doesn't freeze, but you can do it.
Well, appreciate your time.
Yeah,
At least,
thank you.
at least it's good to have you aboard, get answers to some of the questions. I mean, when you look at the burden that's on all the auditors trying to get these answers, and each county interprets things differently. The plus is having you working with surrounding counties like that.
Yeah,
You get the same answer, you may be able to answer our question because it's something that they looked at.
right,
So,
right.
you know, it's really
And I'd
good.
much rather have Paul calling or verifying with somebody in authority than me reading on the auditor's message board that this auditor who had talked to this auditor who had talked to somebody who said, yeah, that's allowed, and then
Yeah, I like
we're
that
all
centralized like
yeah.
that.
Well, and I tell you, I mean, Ben is more up to speed on it than most, so you guys are pretty good.
Does not surprise us at all.
No, it doesn't surprise me either, but I mean, you know, you know, if any county, you know, was in a good spot, it's you guys with you know, as much as Ben is up to speed. on,
I won't say anything to my counterparts in those.
They're- And maybe they just haven't, some of them haven't gotten to that level of looking at it yet. I mean, I know there's a couple counties that are saying we're just gonna hold off and even requesting funds for a while because there's.
When I thought about that, but I figured we might as well have it in our bank account. If nothing else can help Brenda with cash flow issues, if she can move money from a bank account rather than having to cash a CD because
Yep.
it's there. It's there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you help yourself in many ways with that.
But I think there were some, you know, I think there were some folks that thought they had to find what they were gonna spend it on
Before they got
request. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other questions for Paul?
Thank you for coming in.
Very good, yeah.
I'll be in touch with
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to set up a time and try and work through that numbers.
Yeah.
issue. That'll be
Yes.
Well, Thank
good
you.
to get through that, at least.
Yeah, and I'm almost thinking, and I know that maybe not quite as convenient for you, but if we can meet in my office,
For
then I can run reports. If we think of something, I can rerun reports as we go, so.
So, the corner's not inconvenient for me, so.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lee.
Well, do you guys have anything else for me before I?
No.
I think so.
I like it when you don't.
Thanks, Lee.
Yeah.
What else you got, Ben?
I don't have anything else. I'm gonna be gone rest of the week if anyone cares. I have a doctor appointment tomorrow and then Wednesday we're going on a college visit, so I will be gone. for the
Oh.
week.
Those are fun.
Yeah. For my oldest, so new experience for us.
Yeah.
I
The
bet-
first place she wants to visit is Washington State University,
Oh,
so.
my.
Oh,
Wow.
not very far away.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh my goodness.
Did a few on the way out, and a few on the way back.
Yeah, well, there weren't really any on the way. It's like Washington State, Virginia Tech, Kansas State. It's like none of these are in the same area. So yeah, so I'll be gone Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with that.
Good luck on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Any committee reports?
I've got, I met with Andy last week about evaluations and he's looking into it with John Anderson. And I'm getting a hold of a gentleman at ICAP, I already did, and he's offered assistance if we want it. So we can continue that conversation and see where we go with it.
Good.
And then, recycling, I gave you guys an update on email on that. Things are really going well.
At the first judicial district face-to-face meeting on Friday. Only two supervisors showed up, one from Black Hawk and me, but it really was good getting back into, because you have a lot of other people there.
Yeah.
Probation, parole people, and it was a pretty good meeting. But I think at least getting back face-to-face is gonna be a big step here pretty
Yeah.
soon. So there's not much new there. I told them that was my last meeting with them and I wasn't sure just how, what would happen in July. And so whoever does take that over, they'll have to notify down there who would be the contact person.
And I too am taking vacation this week, Tuesday through Friday, so I'll be checking my email, but not really like on hand.
I'm going down this week to the Pella. Tulips are pretty done with, but I got a grandson getting married, so I'll be down there for about 3 days. Oh, you going too? The way it sounds, it better make sure it's all air conditioned, everything we do.
Yeah. Be warm.
I'm going where the high is 60. Great.
Anything else we have? Now I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion to Dan, second by Shirley. Adjourned. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank
I
you,
was
Steve.
surprised that bid came in actually, Below his
That's
estimate.
way below.
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
It's a hell of a
I mean,
difference.
about 200,000 below his.
Yeah,
estimate.
yeah. A lot of change.
But
So was that Brennan, is that, who were them?
K Construction.
That was K Construction.
No, the
Okay.
person here though is Brandon.
That
Oh,
was,
yeah.
They weren't a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
they're close.
yeah.
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 And because you know who got it.
Well, we,